Welcome back. This is the third video in a 6-part series, and really we're talking about the 4-dimensional framework of cultural intelligence. We call it CQ. We've talked about IQ, we've talked about EQ. This is CQ. How do you understand and how are you aware of the people you're working with from other cultures? So we talked a little bit in the introduction, then we went into our motivation in the last video, but this one we really are talking about our knowledge, our cognition. What do we know? And what we know comes from a lot of different places. It's not just, we could Google and see what happens, and we could read a book, kiss, bow, and shake hands, which is good. It gives you a little bit of information, but we have to really understand, do we trust that information, and how deep do we want to know our customers, people we're working with side by side, day to day, and what really sets us up for success with intercultural, interpersonal communication. So really, one of the things when we talk about cognition is something that we call misattribution. So misattribution is assigning something, some habit, some behavior that we do in our first culture, maybe first language, to something somebody else does in their culture. So for example, look, I'm using my hands a lot. In some cultures, that's a no-no. You have to keep your hands very still. You got to keep them quiet. So what happens is, in this situation, if somebody's watching me from another culture right now, they may misattribute, am I reliable? Am I trustworthy? Am I knowledgeable? Do they really want to do business with me? Do they really trust me on their team? Just because some of the behaviors, body language, eye contact, a lot of these things. And this is cognition. This is our knowledge. This is what do we know about working across cultures. And we're not just talking about a specific culture here. So we're talking working generally cross-cultural, because we could talk about working with Japanese or Chinese or Brazilians or Russians. We could talk specifically about what are the actions and behaviors in a specific culture, but that will be for another series down the road. So some of the things that we talk about when we do our series, and we do series at LTC Language Solutions, like 2-hour trainings, 4-hour trainings, other things, but we try to help people to understand something like when you're giving negative feedback to someone from another culture, that there are really ways to give direct negative feedback or indirect negative feedback, so that you can really soften what you're saying. So some of the cultures that give direct negative feedback are like Russia, Germany, Israel, France, Spain, Hungary, a little bit closer to the center. But indirect negative feedback, when they have something negative to say, Japan, Thailand, Korea, China, Saudi Arabia, they don't want to say, no, we're not doing that. No, I can't ship that. No, the order won't be on time. No, we can't respect what you're wanting for the cost. And so they give indirect negative feedback. So what happens when two cultures get together and one doesn't understand that maybe they're trying to say no, maybe they're trying to give indirect negative feedback that, in the workplace or dealing with the customer, and you're really trying to figure out, are they saying absolutely no? Are they saying they're going to try to figure it out? And what's happening there? So that's a cultural dimension that we really have to understand and come to appreciate. Another thing in terms of cognition, as we work with people in other cultures, are what we call individualistic and collective cultures. Some of us like to do things very, very individuals, and in the United States we grow up and we want to do everything ourselves, and we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And really, in that kind of context, we have a cultural anthropologist who has done a lot of work in this, and he says that in China they're a 20 on individualism, and the United States is a 91. So what happens when a 91 gets together with a 20? A lot of frustration, misunderstanding, cultural differences that come into play that could blow up relationships or opportunities, jobs, things like that. We're going to come back and do another part of this cognition, because there's a lot to unpack. So I'll unpack this a little bit more in the next segment. Thank you very much for listening, and talk to you soon. Bye.